Hello everyone, this is a little video about my latest project. So this project is nowhere near complete. It is very not done, but I've been working on it for a while and I'm getting to the point while working on it where I find I find it frustrating to work with and I'm not having a lot of good ideas and I'm having a lot of good ideas about other things. So I figured it'd be a good idea to put a pin in this project and move on for a little bit. But I wanted to document what the idea is, where it's at, and what's been done. So that in worst case scenario, if I find these files later on, I can look at this video and say, oh yeah, that's what I was doing. Cool. So I call this thing 2-track. This is a 2-track wave editor in the style of SoundForge or say Cool Edit Pro, which I believe now is called Adobe Audition. Like the Adobe bought that program and have done their own versions of it. But they were some of the first kinds of audio programs I used, and they're very simple programs. What you do is you find just a straight up wave file that you want to mess with. So I'm going to use this noi.wave. This is the intro to the Noi song Super. If you've ever seen Master of the Flying Guillotine, it's like the theme song to that. And they let you just edit and mess with that file. So here's this. Sounds like this. It always loops right now. I don't have a way to turn off looping, but 90% of the time looping is what you want. And as I said, there's a lot of features missing. So you open up a waveform like this and you mess with it. You run various edits. Say I didn't like the sound. I didn't want this opening drum, this big long paused opening drum. So I could come in here, select that, and say just get rid of it. And that's kind of what this program is for. Let's go back here to the start. It's gone. So this program's been a bit of a challenge to write. And the first big challenge was representing this audio and drawing these waveforms. And the way they're drawn, the way the audio is represented is it's just a big fat array. Well, in this case, it's two big fat arrays, one for the left channel, one for the right channel. And the way that they're drawn is, these arrays are way bigger than the width of this screen. So let's say, each channel was 1 million samples long, and this screen was 1,000 pixels wide. What this, each sort of bar, each sort of up and down point in this would represent 1,000 samples. So the algorithm to draw it is you go through that 1,000 samples and find the minimum and maximum, and then draw a line between the minimum and maximum. So when you're zoomed way far out, you're just sort of looking at general amplitude. So here it's going up and down a lot, so the mins and maxes are both really high. It fades down to some quieter stuff, but as you zoom in, you start to see a little bit more detail. Stuff isn't as symmetrical because you're catching the details of this wave. Now, what I'm doing here has problems because if I zoom in a little bit closer, you'll eventually see this point where everything starts looking all gappy and weird. Yeah, so around here, what's happening is, the min and max, there might only be like 5 samples in here and they're all really close. And then the next sample over is much farther away, the minimum or maximum. And if I zoom in a little further, it gets a little gappier until it's really nasty, and then boop, pops out. And what happened when it popped is now there are less samples I'm displaying than the screen is wide, so it's just drawing the samples in each slot, or it's drawing a line in between them if I zoom even closer. So that's one sample, and then this line goes to the next one. In a lot of these programs, they'll draw a little dot on the sample. I just haven't gotten around to that. I'll probably do something like that. Also seems to be something going wrong on the very side here. I'll have to figure out what that is. Oh yeah, weird. They're both just drawn up to the ceiling. Not sure what's going on with that. I'll have to look into it. As you can see, there's still a lot of bugs and problems with this. This is very much an in-progress program. One trick to help draw this is a thing they use in games called nit mapping, where you represent things as a series of lower resolution samples. So in that case, lower sample rate versions of the same file, and you use that to help speed up drawing these low detail zoomed out drawings versus the high detail zoomed in drawings. So I'll probably be doing some research into that. to figure out what I'm doing here. Apologize, I'm just getting over a cold, so my voice is a little funny, and sometimes I'm about to cough and holding it back. So, sample rates and all that. A 2-track editor has to be able to play back and work with waves of all sorts of different sample rates. And one trouble with that is the sample rate that my audio is playing at, like the audio the computer wants to, play, is different than the file, and I need to, play the file in correct time. So I had to do a lot of work making that work perfectly. I believe right now this file is 44.1 kilohertz, which is like CD audio, and my computer is playing back at 4800, which is slightly better, but it's a nice, round number, 4800 or 48,000 hertz. And so I'm having to use a cubic interpolation scheme when playing this back so that it plays back at the correct speed and, still sounds good. And, I'm not hearing any really nasty aliasing. It sounds about as good as comparable programs that I use. So the next thing about this is I really wanted to mess with the user interface and like play with concepts in user interface design. And one of the things that I really liked is, if you've ever heard of the mother of all demos, it's where like the mouse came from. It was a demo that happened a long time ago where they wanted to show off like the new way of working with computers back in the day when computers were all like teletypes. Like you typed into a big giant typewriter and like a piece of paper printed the output. These guys are like, look, we're going to have screens which show the output in real time, and you're going to be able to like click on various stuff and have graphics that display things, and you'll use this little tool they called the mouse. And the original mouse didn't have any buttons. You couldn't click at all. You had a whole separate device called the chord board, because I think it was literally like piano keys, and you would click on different keys there to do different things. So I was thinking about that user interface and the user interface to a program called KiCad, or maybe KiCad. I think it's KiCad, but I'm not sure. It's a program for doing electronic circuits and stuff. And the way that works is, if I want to do some particular action, so in this case I'll just select some stuff. I go to the spot with the mouse that I want to select, and then I just hit a key on the keyboard. So in this case S to start a selection. S. And now I'm selecting. I drag my mouse around, selecting. When I want to finish it, I hit S again, and it finishes my selection. Hit C to clear it. But I'm not clicking with the mouse a bunch. And as I move on, I want to be able to do all sorts of different features just by hitting single keys and doing stuff. One thing that's weird in this program is you can do multiple selections. That's not very common in these kind of programs, but I figured a big reason to use 2-track editors is if you're working like with a sampler and you want to cut out certain things. So maybe I want like this drum, maybe this guy over here, maybe this guy. So I got a few of them selected, and I can just say, grab those things I've selected and export them to new files. I don't have that functionality implemented here yet, but that's the idea. The way I plan on implementing new functionality and like exposing it is through either keyboard keys, which so far are all built around just selecting areas of the sound and or muting tracks. That's what I'm doing here when I fade them out, is I'm muting the tracks, or like selecting the track. So I hover over it and I hit T, and it says play that track and not any other ones. I can mute the rest. But the general way of interfacing is I click down here and I have a command line. And this is like a regular computer command line. It can do pretty normal stuff, like you can hit up and down to get your previous commands. But what it is doing is just feeding strings into a Lua interpreter, so I can implement new commands as little scripts. And in theory, in the future, I'll be able to say bind commands. Here's an example of a command. I've got the selection. I want to silence this audio. Just make it mute. Boom. I run that command. In theory, as I test commands, I can test them with the command line down here, and then bind them to keys or to some other user interface element, like make little buttons down here or something like that. Or I can parameterize my commands. An example of that would be, let's select some stuff over here. Say arctan and then it has a parameter, which is an amplitude. So this multiplies every sample by 8 and then runs it through Arctan, which gives sort of a distortion-y sound. It's noisy and distorted. One big thing that this program is lacking right now is undo. Part of that is because I am representing these sounds as just a flat array. So to undo, I'd have to copy the whole array, or like remember how to reverse a particular command or something like that, or have some more advanced data structures. And I don't have that yet. That is not a thing I have done. But it's one thing I'll be looking into. So that's a pretty basic overview of what this can do for now. I haven't implemented a whole huge suite of features yet. But I've got a nice flexible scheme for prototyping new features. If they're running slowly in Lua, I can move them into C++. As well, I've got, there's a few user interface bugs here and there, like that thing with the sample running off the side when you zoom in. As well, I need to work on the data structure I'm using to represent these sounds to get features like undo and drawing really, really, really big waveforms. So this little drum loop is not very long. And to be honest, that's a lot of the times when you're working with one of these programs, you're either working with a short little clip like this that you're doing really precise edits or, exports from, or you're working with like a whole normal song. So if I pull open, say, azprime.wave here, this is 3 minutes long. Another piece of user interface would be maybe timing markers just to tell you how big the thing is, where you've selected. But as you can see, when I'm working with this and I try to zoom in, it's clunky and chugs. I don't know if you can hear the mouse turning, but as you're zoomed really far out, it sort of hitches and chugs because it's having to re-summarize that whole entire waveform because it doesn't really, it's not having to re-summarize that whole entire waveform, it's having to re-summarize like everything you can see. And it's not really zooming in super far, so it's not cutting a ton of it off. But yeah, as your waveforms get bigger and longer, zooming and moving and little user interface stuff becomes a lot less responsive because of the way that I'm representing these waveforms and I'm drawing stuff. Well, anyway, that's a quick summary of this program and what it's meant to be. Hopefully I'll have more features on it in the future and more stuff to talk about. Well, thanks for watching. Goodbye.